Hey everyone, and welcome. In this devotional from the Faith in Jesus team, we're going to dive into one of the most foundational stories in the entire Bible, the call of Abraham. Now, this isn't just some ancient history lesson. This is the moment God kicks off his rescue plan for the whole world, and it all starts with just one man.
To really feel the weight of this, we've got to rewind a bit. Remember where we left off in Genesis? After the whole Tower of Babel fiasco, humanity was scattered, totally divided, and just lost. The first 11 chapters of the Bible paint this pretty bleak picture of a fallen race under judgment. So the big question hanging in the air is, how is God going to start putting all these broken pieces back together?
And the answer is it's breathtaking in its simplicity and its grace. God's grand cosmic plan for redemption didn't launch with a powerful empire or a mighty army. Nope. It started with a quiet, personal call to one man, a guy named Abram, who was living in a land steeped in idolatry.
So, this is a massive shift in the story, which brings us to our first section, a world adrift. For those first 11 chapters of Genesis, the camera lens is wide, covering all of humanity. But then, in chapter 12, that camera suddenly zooms in, and the entire focus of the biblical narrative changes for good.
And that pivot is so stark, isn't it? We go from this wide-angle story about everybody to a super tight focus on one man and his family. We shift from a story of judgment, like we saw at Babel, to a brand new story of pure, unearned grace. Instead of humanity scattering further in their rebellion, God steps in and calls a single family out of that mess to be his.
And that, of course, brings us right to the heart of it all. Section 2, the call to Abram. This is it. This is the moment God sets his plan in motion, speaking directly to Abram with a command and a promise that are going to echo through the rest of human history.
Just listen to the weight of these words from Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. God tells Abram to leave everything. Everything. His country, his extended family, even his own father's house. He's being asked to trade every ounce of security he has for a future that depends completely on a God he's just getting to know.
And this command, it goes even deeper in the original Hebrew. The phrase is lech lecha. It's more than just go. It's this intensely personal, almost urgent command to go for yourself. Can you imagine that? It's a call to cut every tie to your past, your identity, your safety net, and just step out into a future built on nothing but a promise from God.
But here's the thing. This massive command comes with an even more massive promise. God says, "And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed." Wow. This is an incredible 7-part promise, a covenant that isn't just for Abram, it's for all of us.
So let's break this down real quick. God promises a specific land, a great nation from his descendants, and a great name, which, by the way, is a direct reversal of what the people at Babel tried to do, right? They tried to make a name for themselves. But the final promise, this is the one. Through Abram, all families of the earth will be blessed. This is really the first whisper of the gospel, pointing toward the Messiah who would one day come from his family line.
So God lays out this incredible, life-shattering call. How on earth does Abram respond? Well, that brings us to section 3, a journey of faith, because his reaction is every bit as amazing as the call itself.
And get this, Abram was 75 years old when he packed up and left. 75! At an age when, let's be honest, most of us are thinking about retirement and taking it easy, Abram is just starting the greatest adventure of his life. It's such a powerful reminder that God's call on your life has no expiration date. The Bible just says it so simply. So Abram departed. No arguing, no hesitation. And the book of Hebrews later gives us this incredible insight. He went out, not knowing where he was going. That right there, that is the very heart of faith. Obeying God's command even when you have no idea what the destination looks like.
So, once he gets to Canaan, Abram's new life really boils down to 2 things you see again and again: the tent and the altar. He pitched a tent which showed he was just a pilgrim, that this world wasn't his permanent home. But he also built an altar, showing his permanent devotion and connection to God, right in the middle of a land that didn't know him.
But you know how it goes, right? A huge spiritual high is almost always followed by a huge test. And that brings us to section 4, a test in Egypt, because Abram's journey of faith was definitely not a straight line up.
Just look at how quickly this happens. It's a classic downward spiral. He goes from building altars in an act of powerful faith to facing a terrible famine in the land. And that trial, it doesn't lead him to more faith.
it leads him straight to fear. Instead of leaning on the God who just promised him everything, he runs down to Egypt, a symbol of the world, and relies on his own clever plan.
You know, there's a verse in Proverbs that just nails what happened here. Proverbs 29:25 says, "The fear of man bringeth the snare, but whoso putteth his trust in the Lord shall be safe." Abram was terrified of what the Egyptians might do to him, so he lied and said his beautiful wife Sarai was just his sister. That fear became a trap, and it nearly cost him everything.
And here's the scary part. On the surface, his little scheme seemed to be working. He got rich, he gained sheep and oxen and all sorts of wealth, but at what cost? He lost his wife, she was taken into Pharaoh's house, the entire promise of God was in jeopardy, and he completely lost his testimony as a follower of the one true God.
Okay, so this looks like a total disaster, right? Abram has failed spectacularly. But what's so amazing is that this story isn't ultimately about Abram's wobbly faith. It's about God's rock-solid faithfulness. And that's our final section, God's faithful rescue.
Right when Abram is at his lowest, having made a complete mess of things, God himself steps in. The Bible says, "The Lord struck Pharaoh and his household with great plagues because of Sarai." God personally and powerfully intervened to protect his promise and to rescue his people from their own foolishness. And what happens next has to be one of the most humbling, cringeworthy moments in the entire Bible. Abram, the man of God, gets called on the carpet and rebuked by a pagan king. Pharaoh exposes his lie and asks him, "What is this that thou hast done unto me?" It is a brutal picture of how our compromise can absolutely destroy our witness to a watching world. So, what can we take away from this incredible story for our own lives? Well, first, we have to answer the call. We all have a spiritual a place of comfort or sin that God is asking us to leave behind. Second, we need to build our altar, making worship a consistent central part of our lives. Third, we have to learn to trust God in the famine, to rely on Him when things get tough, not our own schemes. And finally, maybe most importantly, we have to remember that God's faithfulness is always greater than our failures. And that really brings us to the final question for all of us to think about. Abraham's journey, a journey that changed the entire world, started with just one step of faith out of his comfort zone, out of his home city of Ur. So the question for you is, what is the Ur that God is calling you to leave behind today?